have. Yes?
On the file, when it's an empty, like when we don't have anything on the line, will we get like a null terminator, or like if it's empty, if there is nothing there?
Well, you can have a file that's completely empty that has 0 bytes.
Okay.
That's possible. You need to handle empty structures. Yes.
Okay.
So understand there's a difference between something that's empty versus something that's null. If it's null, it doesn't exist. If it's empty, it exists, but it doesn't have anything in it. So there's a difference between the two.
Okay.
Yes?
Can you explain how to use the exception?
The exception class?
Yeah.
It's actually quite easy. I'm not sure what the question is. I mean, I gave you the exception class. What you do when the exception occurs is you throw it. It will never be thrown unless you throw it. So you have generally a test if some condition, then throw, and then your exception. File, part, exception. And then one of the constructors takes a parameter, which is the message that you want to send. Not open file.
So for all the exceptions in the file parser class, you want them all to throw the same file parse exception error.
Yes. And you should give it a, okay, so let's talk about the error message. There are a couple of things. One, you need to pass in what's wrong and where it is. So it's not enough to just say there was an error. These are different kinds of exceptions that might happen. For instance, the file might not be found. So if there is no such file, it can't be found, then you would throw this exception and say file not found. Depends on what condition you're testing. Maybe there are too many tokens on a line, and you want to throw an exception and say too many tokens on line 25. But where there's an error in the file you're parsing, you want to say what line number, and it needs to match the line numbers in the editor. That is one base. The first line is the first row. The first line is line 1, not 0. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So is this just like a text file that we're opening, or is it
Well, they're not binary. I mean, the extension is irrelevant. It's going to matter later. You're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to take the extension off. But these files are either .s or .asm sometimes. The M68000 files that you're going to be working on for the macro preprocessor are .s. So you'll be opening a .s file. But for now, the extension doesn't matter. Other questions, anyone? Yes.
So for the data structure, we have a choice between the 2D array or the 2D vector.
Well, I wouldn't call it a 2D vector. It's actually not a 2D array either. It's an array of arrays. There are choices that you have. There's certain things you know about an assembly language file that you're going to be processing. One is that there are precisely no more, well, not precisely, there are no more than 4 tokens per line, but there can be 4, but no more. There might be 0, it might be a blank line. There might be 1, there's just a label. There may be 2, 3, or 4 tokens in a line, but no more than 4. So where there isn't anything, if you try to find or access that element, it returns an empty string that exists, not null, not something that doesn't exist. It returns an empty string, which you can print without crashing. But it's just, as I said, an empty string. So all 4 slots exist for each line. All 4 slots exist for each line. So you have an inherently 2-dimensional structure divided into 4 pieces. And the question then becomes, how best to do this? So some of the choices you have. Well, the first dimension really should be a vector. I strongly recommend that you do that, because you don't know how many lines you're going to read. If you make an array and it's not big enough, you'll crash. If you make an array and you make it enormous, you're wasting memory. So the rows really should be vectors. That makes sense. But what about the columns? What about these guys? This is the second dimension, so to speak. Could you use an array of size 4? Could this be a vector of an array of size 4? It's possible, yes. Could be. Could it be a vector of vectors? Yes, that too. This could be a vector, and you insert it in the vector, then at each vector location, each row, you have a vector with 4 elements. The other thing that you can do is to use a struct. Now, a struct does not exist in Java, but should. This is one of the deficiencies of Java. Now, obviously, they knew about them, but made the conscious decision to leave them out. In terms of design, it's not best. Anytime you have a class that has no real behaviors at all, i.e. you only have getters and setters and nothing else, then it really shouldn't be a class. But you don't have a choice with Java, that's all you have. Here you have a choice. You have a reminder. Struct, what shall we call it? Row. String. Label. String. Opcode. String. Operand. String. Comment. So now your vector is a vector of rows. So when you have a row, you can access it this way. Row R1 dot label R1 dot opcode equal I see you design strings rather than hard coding it, but I'm just showing you the syntax here. R1 operand equal and so on. So you can assign them that way. R1 dot comment questions? So you have choices here about what you do. Think of what makes the most sense. This is intuitive R1.opcode. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That's easy. The issue becomes if you're going to do it inside of a loop, and you want to set all four, well, you're going to have 4 statements rather than a simple loop to do assignments. If you use indices, then you can have 0 through 3 for these things and do it inside a little for loop. So it's a little more awkward, but it's easier to read. This is a situation where I want you to make these decisions. I want you to think about the issue. Think about what tools you have and the best way to do it. I'm not saying to you, here's what I recommend. You should do this. Because that takes all of the work out of it. And I want you to consider, think about, reflect on what's the best way to do this, and make your choice based on what you have come up with. There are choices here that you can't make. Is one better than the other? Well, these are the 3 most obvious choices that occur to me. A vector of vectors, a vector of an array, a vector of a struct. And what you choose is entirely up to you. Other questions? Anyone? Okay. How are you going to process this? That is to say, what are the tokens? Well, you have to return strings, right? I mean, if I ask for a token in a given row and column, then you're returning a string, right? But does it have to be a string internally? Does it need to be a string over time? And the answer is no, it doesn't. You have choices. One of the things about C++ is that it was built on top of C. And there's a large library of functions that are built into the C language that are heavily used in C++ because, hey, they exist, they're bulletproof, they're fast, and why not? So there are really 2 kinds of strings in C++. There are character arrays and then there are string objects. Well, the character array has certain advantages in that you can look through and use an index to look at each place, each cell. So how would you process something like this? So add .w a 0. How would you process this line? You're going to have 3 tokens, the label, the opcode, and the operand. So what strategy would you use to break those apart? Yes. Well, you're saying store, but store what? I mean, my question is, how are you going to process this line? Yes?
Could you delete it by spacing? Tab.
Well, how? I mean, the tokenizer, that's what you're writing. Yes?
We take the whole thing, put it in there.
Okay. Take the whole thing, put it in a character. When you read the line, it's a string. It's one thing. It's a string. The question is, how do you turn it into 3 things? Yes?
Would they have a maximum characters per token?
No? There isn't. I mean, at some point it becomes, so big that it's impractical. But there is no actual limit on how long a token could be. Yes.
Can we iterate through the string and maybe look for white space characters like tabs or spaces?
You can. So where I'm going with this, there's essentially two strategies that you can use. One is to go character by character through the string and do something. Now, a string, you can use the square brackets. You can, it's allowed. But be cautious about that because there is no protection for errors when you start using those brackets. You should only use them for read-only, never for writing. It's dangerous to do that. But there's more to it than that. Suppose we have a simplistic strategy that went something like this. I'm going to look at the first character and see whether or not there's anything there. That's step one. Is it a white space or is it a character? Is there anything there? So I can do this. Yeah. Zero. But what? Equals. Okay, if it's a space or a tab, then there's no label. You follow me? This is dangerous. What's wrong? So the heuristic is you move from line to line. You're going through the file one line at a time. You read each line in the file. And you do that. What's wrong with it? Yeah. But line 0 isn't the whole line. Line 0 is the first character. Yes? Well, that's true, in which case it's white space. Right? I mean, this is one line, but we might have add B1, B2. Okay, there's no label. So what's it? Line 0. Well, either a space or a tab. What if it's an empty line? I'll tell you what C++ will not do. It will not throw an array index out of bounds exception. What will it do? It will look at the memory space that would occupy and do the test. So if there happens to be in this byte a 2-0, or I forget what that character is, if there's a match, well, that 2-0 could be a number. It could be part of an integer. It could be part of a floating point number. It could be anything. But if the byte at this address happens to be 2-0, then this passes. And if it doesn't, then you think there's a label. So this is dangerous because it presumes that line 0 actually exists, but does it exist if you have an empty string? No. Therefore, this is dangerous. This is the kind of bug. I was talking to somebody about this earlier. This is the kind of bug you have to watch out for. This is the kind of bug that will bite you, and it's something that's very, very difficult to track down and find. So the behavior here is the first time you run it, it works just fine, and you think your program is great. And the next time you run it, you crash. With a board, you crash out the command line. The program doesn't run at all. You run it again, and it works just fine. And then you run it again, and you get garbage, and you don't know why. So tracking down and finding problems like this can be an enormously difficult challenge. All right, so setting that issue aside, you could have a heuristic like this. Look at the line after you make sure it's not empty. And if in first position there's either a space or a tab, then it's white space. And there's no label, so your first token is going to be an opcode. If there's no label, then the next possible thing is an opcode. So how do you get to the opcode? Well, you move down one character at a time, and while this character is not a space or a tab, keep going. And when it is not a character or a tab, you stop, and that's the beginning of your first token. Oh, this is starting to sound off. Yeah, okay, so you got a token, now you got to grab that token. So how do you do that? You write a while loop and you say, while you don't have a space or a tab, and take that character and stick it on the end of the current token. So go till you hit a white space, unless there's quotes around, in which case keep going if you hit a white space. Oh my. So that sounds kind of scary. So what's the other approach? Well, there kind of is, but not really. There is a C function that works with an array of characters, but there is no straight tokenizer class. It does not exist. So the other approach, given this fact, is that you can use string functions. String functions to take whole chunks rather than doing it a character at a time. Questions? Nevertheless, some of these string functions, or the C string functions, are extremely useful. So I want to talk about these to start with very briefly. Or write down some of the gems and talk about how they work. So recognize that if you have a C string, it is not an object. So you have to be careful. If you want to make a copy of that string, then you need to use the string copy function. The assignment statement will do. All right, so suppose we do this. Is that legal? Is that a legal assignment? I told you this is not. We know why the second one is bad, right? Do we? Because it's a pointer and we don't know what it points to, but we're assigning something to that address even though we don't know what it is. In the variable n, you're allocating 4 bytes per n on the stack. It's got leftovers in there. Whatever was in there before still is there because it isn't wiped out, it isn't initialized, it isn't clear. All that does is say, okay, this address is going to be in, it's 4 bytes in size. When the start dereferences it, it says go to the address in which is unknown, but not 0, and put a 2 in memory at that location. So you're writing to an unknown location. If it belongs to you, then you put a 2 somewhere in memory that's going to do something to your program. If it doesn't belong to you, then you crash out of the command line and the program stops. So this is an error. what you need here is star n equals new. That's what you would need in order to do that. All right. So the first is okay. It's the only one of that form where you can do it because strings are well known. They're common. And the compiler will make S point to hello world. So we're big enough to hold. So that is how you declare a C-style string, either in C++ or C. A string hello world looks the same, kind of is. No, you can't do that. Not right. A character array is not a string. So you cannot make that sentence. This is an error. So how do you do it? You must convert it to a sentence. What about that? String S what equals S, which is a character. Can you do that? Yes, you can. Well, why is that legal and the character not? This is not, you have to use C string function to do this. But here you don't. Can you tell me why? Nobody. No, that's not. The point is this. The assignment statement is overloaded. The assignment statement, the class string, is overloaded. Which means that on the right-hand side you can have different things. And it works. Does everybody understand how operator overloading works? Well, we're just going to talk about it a little bit now so it makes sense to you, but you have to deal with it. It becomes more important if you're doing kinds of classes that we're not doing here. Imagine, could I define a matrix class? I can make two variables, matrix 1 and matrix 2. Now, can I do this? So say I have still going to have matrix M3 equals M1. Could you do it in Java? Well, no. Why not? Well, a matrix is a complex structure with rows and columns. You